The Haitian government declared a state of siege following the assassination of President Jovenel Moise. International leaders call for caution and the preservation of democratic order. 250 medical professionals from 35 countries asked the US president to drop charges against investigative journalist Julian Assange, who's subject to psychological torture in a British prison. Afghan authorities and representatives of the Taliban Islamic movement met Wednesday in Tehran to discuss the future of Afghanistan. The United States withdrawal has poised the Taliban as the country's most powerful political and military force. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, I'm Katrina Goss. The president of Haiti, Jovenel Moise, has been assassinated. According to reports, Moise was killed in an attack on his home in the nation's capital, Port-au-Prince. The country's interim Prime Minister, Claude Joseph, has declared a state of siege and an emergency meeting of the cabinet. The PM said that the president's residence was stormed by unidentified armed men at 1 a.m. local time. The First Lady was also seriously injured in the attack, but reports of her death are yet to be confirmed. Jovenel Moise, aged 53, had been in power since February 2017 after his predecessor, Michel Martelly, stepped down. It should be recalled that Haiti has seen months of unrest, with thousands taking to the streets to demand Moise leave office as his term ended in February. In the face of popular protests, the president had been trying to impose a constitutional referendum to legitimize his presidency. The news is making headlines worldwide, while analysts wonder what will happen next in the troubled Caribbean island. And Haitian interim Prime Minister Claude Joseph declared a state of siege, granting stronger powers to the executive just hours after the assassination of President Jovenel Moise.
In strict application of Article 149 of the Constitution, I have just chaired an extraordinary Council of Ministers meeting, and we have decided to declare a state of siege throughout the country.
Leaders of the Caribbean community are set to meet this Wednesday to discuss the assassination of Haiti's President Jovenel Moise, CARICOM Chairman Gaston Brown has said. Brown, the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, said that he was in shock at the developments, adding that's very, very unfortunate. Up until Tuesday night, Brown had chaired the annual summit of CARICOM leaders, at which the situation in Haiti had been discussed. And the reactions to Moise's assassination are already coming in. On his Twitter account, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said his government firmly condemns the crime. He expressed condolences for Moise's family and solidarity with the Haitian people. We call on all political forces to unite in finding a solution to the deep crisis the country is in, he said. From Mexico, Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard also expressed condolences to the Haitian people and reiterated his rejection of violence. Meanwhile, the possibilities of foreign intervention, as usual, are already clear. Colombian President Ivan Duque has called on the Organization of American States to send an urgent mission to Haiti in order to protect what he called democratic order in the country. For Duque, the assassination was a barbarian act of cowardice against the entire Haitian people. And continuing with the reactions from leaders across the world to President Moise's magnacide, here's what some of them have expressed on social media. Michel Martelly, the former president of Haiti, expressed that Haiti is appalled with the news of the cruel assassination of President Jovenel Moise. He described the news as a blow to the country and for Haitian democracy that struggles to find its way. Luis Abinadar, president of the neighboring Dominican Republic, condemned the killing, adding that this crime goes against democratic order in Haiti and in the region. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel also took to Twitter, stressing, "We deeply regret the death of the president of Haiti. We strongly condemn the violent act that caused his death. Our condolences to family members and the Haitian people. We call for peace." Luis Arce, president of Bolivia, stated regret on the murder of the president of the sister Republic of Haiti. He condemned these violent acts and expressed condolences to the Haitian people. Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arias strongly condemned the assassination. He expressed condolences on behalf of the Bolivarian government and unconditional solidarity with the Haitian people, while calling for peace and understanding. Juan Orlando Hernandez, president of Honduras, strongly condemned the assassination, expressing solidarity with Moise's family and the Haitian people for such a reprehensible act. He called for peace and respect for democracy. Sebastián Piñera, president of Chile, condemned the cowardly assassination, calling for unity and peace to strengthen democracy and find a way out of the crisis. Boris Johnson, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, claimed he was shocked and saddened at the death of President Moise, calling his killing an abhorrent act. And the European Union has also reacted to the news from Haiti. Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell said he was shocked by the assassination of the president to stabilise the Caribbean nation. On Twitter, he said the crime poses a risk of instability and a spiral of violence. In other news, on Tuesday, the Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro demanded the United States government stop meddling in Venezuela's internal affairs after a comment on the upcoming regional elections was issued.
I tell the United States government mirror in the internal affairs of Venezuela that we do not get into the electoral disaster that you were. Do not interfere in the internal electoral process that you don't know own this country. And Venezuela is not a colony of the United States government. Do not mirror here. Do not get involved in Venezuela. Venezuela has its institutions, has the best, most verifiable and auditable electoral system in the world. And we are going to elections and we will register all candidates who have to register.
In the United States, where gun crime is rampant, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo on Tuesday issued an executive order declaring gun violence a disaster emergency. The governor hailed the order as the first step in violence throughout the state. He said the disaster emergency status will allow the state to address the crisis by expediting money and resources to communities. Cuomo's announcement comes as New York City and the country as a whole struggles to curb a rise in gun violence. The executive order comes after a particularly violent weekend in which 50 people were shot and wounded in the state, 26 of them in the Big Apple. A month after the second-round presidential elections, Peruvian authorities have yet to officially proclaim the president-elect. Supporters of the winner, leftist Pedro Castillo, are mobilizing to defend the result. In the middle of the cold Lima winter, hundreds of Castillo's supporters who've travelled from distant parts of the country spent the night in some 180 tents in Democracy Square, in front of the National Jury of Elections headquarters. The jury continues to process the baseless claims of fraud submitted by the far-right losing candidate Keiko Fujimori before proclaiming the winner. As the process lags on, the National Front for Democracy and Governance of Peru, a network made up of trade unions, collectives, civil society associations and some political parties, called for a national strike on Tuesday to demand the proclamation of Pedro Castillo as president.
We have resisted this for a month now, but we want to resist more until the jury's decision is recognized.
We are going to undertake something more radical because we will no longer allow our votes to be easily labeled as terrorists and then not proclaim President Pedro Castillo Terrones. We feel discriminated against.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Pleas for Julian Assange to be freed from prison are being stepped up amid warnings that the WikiLeaks founder is suffering severe psychological abuse. The United States is appealing against a United Kingdom court decision in January not to extradite him, but no date has been set for the hearing, so Assange remains in Belmarsh prison in appalling conditions. The British judge ruled that transferring Assange to the United States would put his life in danger. A group of doctors representing over 250 medical professionals from 35 countries wrote to US leader Joe Biden, urging him to drop the charges against Assange, which are based on a US Espionage Act dating over a century ago. The number of victims found after a plane crash in the far east Russian region of Kamchatka on Tuesday has risen to 19. None of the 28 people who travelled to the city of Palana survived, according to the local media. Authorities cannot currently rule out any of the three main theories regarding the cause of the crash: bad weather, equipment malfunction, or pilot error. Wednesday is the second out of 3 days of mourning issued by Kamchatka officials. President Vladimir Putin expressed his condolences to the victims' families, who were assured by Pope Francis thanked people around the world for their kind messages and care regarding his health following colon surgery. "I'm touched by the many caring messages received in these days. I thank everyone for their closeness and prayers," Francis tweeted. Among church leaders sending their get-well wishes was Archbishop Hector Miguel Vidarte, president of the Latin American Episcopal Council, who said he received the news of the pontiff's good recovery with deep joy. Several heads of state and government also expressed good wishes to the head of the Catholic Church, like the presidents of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas, of Turkey, Tayyip Erdogan, and Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel. The world has now passed the tragic milestone of 4 million recorded COVID-19 deaths, although the true toll is likely higher, the World Health Organization warned.
The world is at a perilous point in this pandemic. We have just passed the tragic milestone of 4 million recorded COVID-19 deaths, which likely underestimates the overall toll.
A COVID-19 outbreak on China's porous border with Myanmar pushed new cases to the country's highest level in 6 months and brought tightened security. There were 57 new cases reported, the highest daily tally since late January.
Our responsibility, spare no efforts to prevent the spread and export of the disease, and control the epidemic within the smallest range at the fastest speed, with the toughest measures and by the strictest.
The Communist Party of China held Tuesday a summit with world political parties via video link on the occasion of its 100 years of existence. In his speech, President Xi Jinping stressed the need for a more equal distribution of wealth and cooperation among states. Over 160 countries were represented by diverse political parties in the video conference event, among them Russia, Cuba, Argentina, Vietnam and South Africa. Issues discussed included the COVID-19 pandemic, global challenges concerning peace and development, and the construction of societies based on rights, equality and environmental sustainability in opposition to destructive neoliberal policies. And Xi Jinping, General Secretary of the Communist Party of China, called for cooperation among political parties across the world to jointly cope with global risks and challenges.
We should shoulder the responsibility to strengthen cooperation and join hands to cope with global risks and challenges. Faced with the rampant COVID-19 pandemic, we should adhere to scientific measures, advocate solidarity and cooperation, bridge the immunity gap, oppose politicizing the pandemic or leveling the virus, and jointly promote the building of a community of common health for mankind. Faced with the common enemies, such as terrorism, we should promote security and stability through cooperation, and work together to forge a strong shield for security. Faced with the fragile ecological environment, we should respect nature, conform to nature, and protect nature, and jointly build a green homeland. We should live up to our responsibility, work shoulder to shoulder to find a solution for the harmonious coexistence between human and nature.
At the summit, Cuban Communist leader and President Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez highlighted China's role as an important force in maintaining world balance, stability and peace.
When the founding Congress of the Communist Party of China was held 100 years ago, it marked the beginning of a significant chapter in modern history. Among its delegates was Mao Zedong, whose contributions as party leader to the revolutionary struggle and national liberation of that country, which was then as poor as it was populated, will always be remembered with admiration.
Meanwhile, President of Argentina, Alberto Fernández, congratulated his Chinese counterpart for his remarks during the inauguration of the World Political Parties Summit.
I would like to begin by congratulating President Xi Jinping for his wonderful speech. Multilateralism, the value of environmental protection, the value of preserving world peace, and the value of solidarity. I believe that these are 4 essential points to think of a better world, and that is why I wanted to begin my speech by congratulating him.
In addition, former Bolivian president and indigenous leader Evo Morales took the floor as chairman of the ruling Movement for Socialism Party.
China's commitment with multilateralism, international law, and with the Organization of the United Nations is extremely important for facing the global challenges ahead. The COVID-19 pandemic shows how fragile life is, and that when we are connected, challenges like climate change and inequality can be solved.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Tehran, the government of Iran hosted talks between the Afghan authorities and the Taliban on Wednesday. After 20 years of Western invasion of the country, the Taliban Islamic movement emerged as the dominant military, political and economic force and is active in seizing the opportunity left by the sudden United States departure. The government in Kabul seems unable to sustain the war and its soldiers are fleeing to neighbouring countries. And while talks were being held in Tehran, the Taliban launched a major assault on a provincial capital in Afghanistan on Wednesday. The National Directorate of Security reported that during the assault, the Taliban entered the city's police headquarters and the local office of the country's spy agency, the Defense Minister Bishmal Mohammed said. This attack is the first since the United States and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization began their pullout. Iran formally accused Israel on Tuesday of mounting a sabotage attack on a nuclear facility near Tehran last month. Cabinet spokesman Ali Rabai said the attack on a building in Karaj, a city about 40 kilometers northwest of the capital that belongs to the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran, sought to thwart the ongoing talks in Vienna aimed at salvaging the nuclear deal with world powers. The latest report follows several suspected incidents targeting Iran's nuclear program that have heightened regional tensions in recent months as diplomatic efforts continue in Vienna. The Zionist regime is opposed to any return to the agreement with Iran, which would mean the lifting of US sanctions against the country.
The news of the attack is correct, but it has just caused a hole in the ceiling, and this act of sabotage hasn't damaged any important equipment, and it has failed to hit the equipment. It couldn't go beyond creating a hole in the ceiling. This is not the first time that the only country that would benefit from our talks being stopped tries to stop our efforts. We guess that these plans are made by that country.
A South African court heard former President Jacob Zuma's application to halt execution of an imminent arrest order this Tuesday. The Constitutional Court handed Zuma a 15-month jail term last week for failing to appear before a commission on corruption. Zuma was initially given until the end of Sunday to hand himself in, after which police would be obliged to arrest him. But police gave him several days breathing space as he filed an appeal that the court agreed to hear. Zuma's lawyer argued he was not a flight risk given his delicate health and that he was under the care and security of the state. A verdict is expected on Friday. In South Sudan, millions face emergency levels of hunger. Of them, more than 100,000 are literally at risk of famine this lean season, the World Food Programme has warned.
Been incredibly concerned at the levels of food insecurity in the country. Almost 7.24 million people in severe levels and 108,000 people across 6 counties who are literally at risk of famine this lean season. So you can say that certainly we are very concerned of food insecurity.
Hundreds of thousands of people displaced by conflict in the north of Mozambique risk facing a hunger emergency without urgent donor funding, according to the UN. The United Nations World Food Programme said food assistance could be completely suspended unless it raises $121 million to assist the caseload of 730,000 people from September through December, as families are completely reliant on humanitarian support. Thousands have continued to flee insurgent violence in Mozambique's northern province of Cabo Delgado, the most affected. a situation that's expected to spread to several regions of the country.
Started moment this baby inside the house to take the baby, and they came in. When I picked up the baby, they shoot, "Hey, stop, we will kill you, stop, we will kill you." I begged, I say, "No, please don't kill us." I was already carrying the baby. He was naked, no clothes, nothing at all.
This was a tourism area, fishing, good economy, people had a good way of life, but guess what? Insurgents, terrorists come in, killing people, raping women, just exploiting a good way of life. And so the World Food Program is now in here trying to bring hope to people. 715,000.
Scientists in Kenya are on a quest to save the northern white rhinoceros, one of the 2 subspecies of white rhino who are in the brink of extinction. They're confident about saving the species using 9 embryos obtained from eggs harvested from 2 surviving females and frozen sperm from deceased males. The next stage is to work out how to take those embryos and put them into a surrogate southern white rhino female. The scientists hope to have 1 or 2 northern white rhino calves in 2 to 3 years. They'll repeat the process multiple times to eventually have enough live rhinos to breed naturally amongst each other and gradually recover the population, which has dwindled mainly due to the effects of climate change and poaching. And we've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also follow us on our shows on our YouTube channel.